is the land. But was the area known as the Promised Land really given by God to a chosen people? And is the proof really found in the pages of the Old Testament?
Once a spot is deemed sacred, it's always sacred.
It is one of the most important books ever written. Its contents have been studied, debated, and fought over for thousands of years. But does the Bible also contain secrets? Secret prophecies? Secret characters? Secret texts? Now, for the first time, an extraordinary series will challenge everything we think, everything we know, and everything we believe about the Bible. Israel, 2013. As far as its citizens are concerned, this is sacred ground. And Jerusalem, its largest city, is its epicenter, its heart. It is the place where a boy named David became a king, and where the mighty Solomon built his great temple. But Jews are not the only people who view this land as sacred. For Christians, it is the land of Jesus, the birthplace of their faith. And for Muslims, it is the land of Muhammad, the place from where he ascended into heaven. For this reason, the holiest place on earth is also one of the most contested, the most fought over, and the most dangerous.
Talk about a small, narrow piece of land, less than 150 miles, somewhat compared to the size of New Jersey. It's not a huge area, but it has attracted tremendous attention by many cultures over the centuries.
God made a promise that this land was flowing with milk and honey, this sort of paradise on earth. It's sort of ironic that for the past at least 1,000 years, people have fought brutally and viciously over it.
The Holy Land we know today is riddled with bullet holes, divided by barbed wire, and patrolled by armed military. Conflict has marred the enduring beauty of this landscape, with the scars of war and bloodshed. But why? Some say the answer may be found in the very first pages of the Holy Bible, in what is commonly referred to as the Old Testament. According to the book of Genesis, God sent a great flood to wipe sin and corruption from the ancient world. When it was over, a merchant named Abraham was summoned by God to start a new kingdom on earth, a so-called Promised Land, where he and his descendants could thrive and live in peace and prosperity.
Judaism began at a time when religions were connected to countries. And indeed, every country had its own God. The Jews were the first to believe in this omnipotent deity. And this omnipotent deity called upon Abraham, and he told him, leave this country and go unto a different land. I'm going to show you. That land was the land of Canaan, which became the Promised Land, the land that we call Israel today.
God tells Abraham that his descendants will possess the land between the river of Egypt and the Euphrates. And so it's now what we would think of today as the area of Israel and part of Egypt and part of Jordan, part of Syria.
But a close examination of the Bible also reveals many surprising passages. Here, God orders his chosen people, the Jews, or Israelites as they were then known, to take control of the promised land not by peaceful means, but by any means necessary.
There were already people living in Canaan, but God promised that the descendants of Abraham would be the ones who would possess this land.
God's commandment to the Israelites was not just to conquer the land of Canaan, but to slaughter every last inhabitant of the land. Every man, woman, and child, every ox, every goat, every fawn, every bit of grass, the Lord says, has to be destroyed as an offering to God before the land can be purified and given to the Jews as their promised inheritance.
Did an almighty God really compel the Jews to a violent takeover of the land? And could this be the reason the land known as Israel remains so fought over even today? Temple Mount in Jerusalem. According to the Bible, it was near this picturesque hilltop that Abraham and his descendants settled. But God continued to test the faith of his followers, even perhaps asking the unthinkable. Bible scholars believe this is the place referred to as Mount Moriah in the book of Genesis, where Abraham was commanded to kill his son Isaac as a sacrifice to God. According to the text, it was here that Abraham bound his son's hands and feet and placed him on a sacrificial altar on top of the mountain. But when Abraham raised his knife to slay Isaac, an angel of God appeared and stopped him.
God tested Abraham's faith. Abraham passed the test of faith by complying with God's will, as should we all, we're told, and thus Isaac was allowed to live.
This story of Abraham's absolute faith marks this site, also known as the Temple Mount, as the most holy site in all of Judaism.
Mount Moriah is the mountain that's found in Genesis 22 is the mountain where Abraham was asked to sacrifice his son. It established Mount Moriah as a center of the universe. The idea there being that there's a place where the connection between the heavens, the earth, and the underworld is particularly strong.
But the book of Genesis also reveals that Canaan was not always a land of milk and honey. A drought forces the Israelites, Abraham's descendants, to seek refuge in the fertile Nile Delta in Egypt, where, according to the Old Testament, they were enslaved by the pharaohs for 400 years. In the second book of the Bible, Exodus, God appears to the prophet Moses at a burning bush in the desert and instructs him to free his people from slavery and lead them to the promised land.
So Moses goes to Egypt and confronts Pharaoh. He isn't going to just any ruler. He is going to a ruler who is viewed as the God incarnate. He stands before Pharaoh and demands Pharaoh to let his people go. Pharaoh refuses to let the people go.
According to the story, Moses' request to free the Israelites is rejected. So Moses returns to Pharaoh and rains down onto Egypt a series of 10 deadly plagues.
God empowers Moses to do plagues against the Egyptians, Finally, the Pharaoh relents, lets the people go. This showed that the people of Israel were God's chosen people, and that when necessary, he would intervene on their behalf.
But in the chapters of Exodus, the migration out of Egypt to the Promised Land is not an easy one. During the harsh journey, God enables Moses to perform miracles, to provide food, water, and shelter. Although it seems that God has protected them from all harm, the Israelites doubt they are strong enough to capture the territory from the Canaanites. The story recounted in the fourth book of the Bible, the book of Numbers, says that Moses sends a team of scouts to survey the Promised Land.
Moses had been commissioned by God to send in 12 spies, to see what the land was like, and to be motivated to then take it over. And the result is that 10 of those 12 spies say that it's impossible to take this land over. That those who live there are too menacing, too threatening, and that they didn't believe that God could give them that promised land.
According to the traditional interpretation of the Exodus from Egypt, God forced his chosen people to wander the desert for 40 years as a test of their faith. But some biblical scholars offer a different interpretation, that the 40 years was actually a death sentence imposed by God, a punishment for those who doubted him.
The Israelites aren't wandering around in the wilderness for 40 years because they got lost. They're wandering around in the wilderness as a punishment from God for not having the faith to take the promised land when they had the opportunity.
That generation has to be purged. It has to be eliminated so a strong, new, young generation of believers and fighters can take over. That's quite a shocking moment.
Was the Israelites' 40-year exile in the wilderness really God's way of ensuring that only their children would enter the so-called Promised Land? Or is there an even greater secret behind this epic story? One that may reveal that the Exodus never happened at all. The plains of Moab and the foothills of Mount Nebo in what is now Jordan. This picturesque plateau overlooking the Dead Sea might have been the Israelites' first tantalizing glimpse of the so-called Promised Land. It was here, after 40 years of wandering in the desert, that Moses would finally lead his people to salvation. Close examination of the fourth book of the Bible, the book of Numbers, reveals a little-known fact. Moses would never step foot on that hallowed ground. But why?
Israelites are wandering in the desert. They need water. They're in desperate circumstances. They're going to die of thirst.
God tells Moses to bring forth water from a rock. God very explicitly tells him to speak to the rock, not to strike the rock. Moses does so by striking the rock with his rod. And for this act of disobedience, where God says, "You did not treat me as holy before the people," Moses is shut out of the promise.
And so, really, the only view that Moses had of the Promised Land was from the top of Mount Nebo and see the hills of the Promised Land before him.
But why would God inflict such a severe punishment on Moses, especially after Moses served him so loyally and for so many decades? Was it because God viewed the error as disobedience? If so, what other secrets about the Exodus from Egypt might we find hidden in the pages of the Holy Bible? And could modern archaeology shed light not only on this biblical story, but on the Jews' very claim to the Promised Land? The Sinai Peninsula, Egypt. Although speculation regarding the exact route the Israelites took while wandering 40 years in the desert has been widely debated by scholars, the book of Exodus indicates that Moses led the 3 Jewish slaves south out of Egypt, across the Red Sea, and then east to Mount Sinai and the wilderness. But although archaeologists and biblical scholars have excavated and explored this area for centuries, no physical evidence of the Exodus has been found.
One of the biggest discrepancies that we have between archaeology and the biblical text is the question of Israel. When you look at the archaeological record, there's a big question of whether or not there actually was an Exodus. The local numbers of around 2 million people total going into the wilderness, you would expect to find camps and other traces of their wandering. In surveys that have been done in the Sinai, they have evidence of nomadic groups going back to 10,000 BC, but nothing from the time of the Exodus, absolutely nothing. The problem that we have is when our faith tells us one thing and the evidence and data and facts tell us something else. Do I cling to my faith and deny the reality, the experience, the facts, the evidence? Or do I embrace my experience, my reality, and do I rethink the way I think about God?
Some scholars believe a lack of evidence can neither confirm nor deny the validity of the Exodus text, and that there may in fact be a simple explanation for this lack of physical proof.
Some people have an unrealistic expectation that we ought to be able to find some evidence of Israel in the wilderness. The sorts of containers they would have used, tents they would have lived in, are not going to leave permanent marks of their presence.
I don't believe that even if there was an exodus that we would find archaeological remains, because it's people wandering through the desert and they've been doing that for millennia. So that's just not the sort of thing that would leave traces in the archaeological record.
Is it really possible that the 40-year Exodus as described in the Old Testament never happened at all? Or can the answer be found by taking a closer look at the actual religious texts?
We're told that there are 600,000 men prepared for war. So if you add the women and children, it's 2.5 to 3 million people. There's no way that 3 million people left Egypt who had been enslaved in Egypt. In fact, the entire population of Egypt probably was barely 3 million itself.
The likeliest scenario is that there was a small group who left Egypt, felt their deliverance was miraculous, and came to Israel and somehow created this new society based on ancient traditions.
But even if there are those who believe the story of the Exodus might have been exaggerated, the discovery of a piece of physical evidence proved them wrong. What if a relic of their journey, one described in great detail, could prove the biblical accounts to be true? Wouldn't it also prove the validity of the Israelites' claim to a so-called promised land?
The Ark of the Covenant plays a very important role in Judaism because, after all, it housed the Ten Commandments, the law on which the very foundation of Judaism is built.
It's the holiest object that ever existed in the Jewish tradition. And there are people who, because their belief somehow needs to be palpable and physical, feel as though if they could see it, somehow that would prove God's will in this world.
The Ark of the Covenant was to be a mobile symbol of God's presence on the Israelites' journey to the Promised Land. But if such a great and holy object existed, where is it? According to the Hebrew Bible, once in the Promised Land, The Ark of the Covenant was housed inside a secret inner sanctuary of King Solomon's temple built in Jerusalem. By around 586 BC, the temple is said to have been destroyed in battle, and the whereabouts of the Ark became unknown.
One tradition, of course, is that simply destroyed by the Babylonians when the temple was burnt and melted. That's the end of it.
However, because the ark never showed up again, people often wondered what really did happen to the ark.
Throughout the centuries, the search for the Ark of the Covenant has consumed both archaeologists and Bible scholars. If it were ever found, it may prove that not only were the biblical accounts of Moses based on historical events, but that the Israelites' covenant with God did, in fact, exist.
I'm a great believer in trying to find out as much as we can archaeologically about what happened in biblical history and the way in which we can validate it, as long as we're intellectually honest. Some things we'll be able to prove, some things we will disprove, and much we will never know.
But given the controversial nature of the Jewish people's divine claim to the Holy Land, perhaps the Ark has remained not lost, but deliberately hidden, protected from those who would destroy it, or kept away from those who might wish to exploit its power. But the Ark is not the only biblical artifact to draw such intense interest. Relics and holy objects are found every day. Objects that might not only validate Jewish claims to the Holy Land, but also those by Christians and Muslims, claims that reignite ethnic and religious tension with every new discovery. Sinan, Turkey, August 2013. While digging at the site of a 7th century church, archaeologists discover an astonishing object, a small box containing a piece of wood that some believe might actually be from the very cross on which Jesus was crucified. According to ancient historical accounts, the remains of the so-called true cross were first discovered in Jerusalem in 326 AD by Helena Augustus, the mother of Emperor Constantine the Great.
Constantine's mom was a devout Christian, and one of the places that she believed she discovered was the place where Jesus was crucified. While she was excavating, she found a piece of what she believed to be the authentic cross of Jesus. She brought this back to Constantinople.
In this legend, pieces of the cross were distributed to churches throughout Constantinople, in what is now Istanbul, Turkey. Eager to preserve any physical evidence of the life and teachings of Jesus, the early Christian church enthusiastically scoured the Holy Land for relics such as these, including drops of Jesus' blood, the goblet from which he drank during the Last Supper, even the shroud of his burial.
Any individual artifacts that we can definitely associate with Jesus, the Holy Grail, the that he drank out of at the Last Supper, or the clothing that he wore, or something like that. We might actually have a cup that Jesus drank out of, but we would never know it.
But objects such as these also validated the importance of the Holy Land as the epicenter of Christian worship. It is here, according to the New Testament, where Jesus was born, where he walked, where he was baptized, and where he was executed. But of all the places that are associated with Jesus, perhaps none is more important or more sacred than Jerusalem.
Jesus was crucified in Jerusalem. Jesus was raised in Jerusalem. Jesus ascended from Jerusalem.
Jerusalem was the center of early Christianity for centuries. So you might say that there's sort of a gravitational pull of Christian faith back to the city of Jerusalem.
And so for Christianity, Jerusalem becomes sort of a navel of the world, this sacred space from which the Spirit of God flows to all of humanity.
According to all four Gospels of the New Testament, Jesus was crucified on a hillside area called Calvary, known in the Bible as Golgotha, just outside the walled city of Old Jerusalem. And it was here, in the year 326 AD, just after his mother's discovery of the so-called true cross, that Emperor Constantine built the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
The Church of the Holy Sepulchre is considered the holiest site in Christianity, for it is positioned over the place where Jesus is believed to have been crucified and buried and then have risen from the dead. In fact, the mount on which Jesus is crucified is encased in the church itself.
Rebuilt in 1149 AD, the church is now shared by several different Christian denominations.
This is obviously a very desirable place for Christian sects to set up shop, so to speak, and we have the presence of at least 6 Christian sects who have parts of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
The Greek Orthodox control the majority of the church, followed by Roman Catholics and other Christian groups. And the relations between these various Christian groups is not all that good, because they're very territorial. And so you'll get a Roman Catholic priest cleaning a part of the floor that intrudes into the zone controlled by the Greek Orthodox, and they'll get into a broom fight. Certainly, this kind of competition between religious groups in the holiest place of Christianity raises a lot of questions. If these groups can't get along, who can?
But the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is only one of many religious sites that are based on biblical accounts of the life of Jesus. Located on a hilltop that was once covered in olive trees, the Mount of Olives lies on the eastern border of ancient Jerusalem. According to the New Testament book of Acts, it was from here that Jesus ascended into heaven, and many of the Christian faithful believe that it is also here that Jesus will first appear when he returns for the day of judgment.
If you look at Jerusalem, there's a whole hill of graves right on the Mount of Olives and right outside Jerusalem, because it's Orthodox belief that when the Messiah comes, he'll come there first. And so the people buried there will come out of the graves there. And that's actually said in the Gospel of Matthew.
You have everything from a very literal second coming of Jesus returning to the Mount of Olives. You have some that view really this as being a more symbolic return. But it's very difficult to unify these disparate points of view.
Jesus, it's clear that he is going to return. He doesn't give specifics when that is going to happen. In fact, he warns us not to give date and time to that.
Although Christians, like the Jews, believe they have a claim to Jerusalem, there is no mention of a promised land in the New Testament. Jesus himself never mentioned one. Instead, he claimed that his kingdom was not of this earth, but was, in fact, in heaven. Nevertheless, in the 11th century AD, Christian armies from Western Europe launched a series of crusades to reclaim Jerusalem from Muslim control.
So there was this idea that the Christians need to take the lands back for Christianity, specifically Jerusalem. Now, nowhere is this in Scripture.
Christians say the Muslims are the power people, and we are God's people. We're going to go and destroy the Muslims, and we're going to take Jerusalem back for God. So that's the initiation of the First Crusade.
But despite years of bloody and brutal military battles, the Holy Land remained under Muslim power. But what was so important about this land that the Muslims would fight so fiercely to retain control of it? especially if Mecca in Saudi Arabia is their most sacred site? The answer may be found in the pages of the Bible. The Temple Mount. Here can be found the remains of the Western Wall, the ancient retaining wall of the Hebrew Temple, built by Herod the Great in the 1st century BC. It is considered the holiest site in all of Judaism. It was also here where Jesus threw out the money changers from the temple, leading to his arrest and crucifixion. And for this reason, Christians also believe this place to be sacred ground. Yet, since the Crusades, this 35-acre plateau has remained under Muslim control and is currently the site of one of the most sacred shrines in all of Islam, the Dome of the Rock.
For Muslims, Jerusalem is important because the Dome of the Rock is this building that was built over the spot where Muslims believe Muhammad ascends up to heaven to encounter God. Muslims used to face in the direction of Jerusalem when they prayed.
According to the Quran, the Prophet Muhammad made a miraculous journey from Mecca to Jerusalem in one night, arriving at the foundation stone from where he ascended to heaven to meet with God.
He goes from Mecca to Jerusalem, and then from Jerusalem into the sky on his winged horse, Buraq. And then he flies and takes a tour of the universe, and then comes back to Mecca, all in one night.
He meets all the great prophets of the Bible, including Jesus, where he in essence becomes their successor.
Okay, so I want to build off the theory that I had yesterday, and I want to talk about how the post-credit scene for Thunderbolts basically gives us a really good indicator of what's happening with Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. I also want to clarify here, I'm not saying we invoke the map makers and the Sidera Maris. Yes, in Marvel Comics, they were writing incursions, jumping from one world to the next, sanitizing that world, and then using that kind of method to map the multiverse. What I'm saying is that, in effect, the incursions, while we don't know exactly how they started, if there ever even was a genesis point, Doctor Doom learned that if you leave your universe, travel to another universe, you pull your universe with you, and that causes an incursion. And so Doctor Doom is effectively wiping out universes using incursions, because it's a far more practical way to do it. The alternative is for Doctor Doom to show up into a universe, wipe out all the superheroes on Earth, go into the universe itself, into space, destroy the Nova Corps, destroy Thanos if he exists, all that kind of stuff. But what we've learned over the Marvel Cinematic Universe's history since Doctor Strange 2 and the introduction of incursions is that once an incursion starts, there's no way to stop it. And there's no force throughout the entirety of the cosmos that can prevent it. And if the Marvel Cinematic Universe is even going in the direction of the comics, again, we know from Jonathan Hickman's first 3 issues of New Avengers in the Avengers and New Avengers story, not even an Infinity Gauntlet can stop an incursion. Captain America tried, and the gauntlet was destroyed. So there's no conceivable way to prevent it from happening. Along the way, what Doctor Doom is doing is marshaling an army, building forces. The idea
Who is Doom 2099? In Marvel Rivals, the 2 main antagonists are Doctor Doom and Doom 2099. We all know main Doom's origin story. But what is Doom 2099's story? Well, his story begins when he suddenly appears in Liberia, transported to the year 2099, the same universe as Spider-Man 2099. And he's lost his memory. Doom makes his way to the capital, only to find it taken over by a cyborg called Tiger Wild. He reveals that after Doom's disappearance, Liberia was left leaderless, and he saved it from corporations and took over as leader. Doom is furious and demands that Wild leave the throne, but Doom is defeated by Wild's advanced technology. Wild removes Doom's masks and is surprised to see that Doom has no scarring on his face. Wild accuses him of being a knockoff, and then does actually scar him and throws Doom out of the city. Doom is saved by a Romani clan called the T.B.E, who are actually his descendants, and want to bring down Wild. They work together and break into the Pixel Corporation, where Doom upgrades his technology and gets his new suit. Doom returns to Liberia and defeats Wild, being ruler of Liberia. Who is Doom 2099? In Marvel Rivals, the 2 main antagonists are Doctor Doom and Doom 2099. We all know main Doom's origin story. But what is Doom 2099's story? Well, his story begins when he suddenly appears in Liberia, transported to the year 2099, the same universe as Spider-Man 2099. And he's lost his memory. Doom makes his way to the capital, only to find it taken over by a cyborg called Tiger Wild. He reveals that after Doom's disappearance, Liberia was left leaderless, and he saved it from corporations and took over as leader. Doom is furious and demands that Wild leave the throne, but Doom is defeated by Wild's advanced technology. Wild removes Doom's masks and is surprised to see that Doom has no scarring on his face. Wild accuses him of being a knockoff, and then does actually scar him and throws Doom out of the city. Doom is saved by a Romani clan called the T.B.E, who are actually his descendants and want to bring down Wild. They work together and break into the Pixel Corporation, where Doom upgrades his technology and gets his new blue suit. Doom returns to Liberia and defeats Wild, being ruler of Liberia once more. Doom then saw how this new world was taken over by evil corporations and made it his mission to save the world in his way, of course. But the question remained, was this truly the real Doom. The answer would be revealed when the supposed real Doom confronted him. But it turns out a woman named Neon Angel had body swapped an imposter in Doom's body and Doom's mind into the imposter's body. This explains why his face had no scarring at first and his memory was hazy. So while he wasn't in his original body, it was still Doom's mind. Doom then continued his mission of saving the world when he would face against Wakanda, Atlantis, the Savage Lands, and he would work with Punisher, Ghost Rider, and Spider-Man 2099 to free Valhalla from Alchemax. This culminated to Doom's plot to becoming the President of the United States. Doom broke into the White House, made the real president end his own life, and declared himself as president. Doom created the Black Cabinet, which was full of his allies he made throughout the series. He also dissolved the Public Eye and other security forces and rebuilt them as a new incarnation of S.H.I.E.L.D. and made Punisher 2099 the new head of S.H.I.E.L.D. Additionally, Doom hired 2099's Ghost Rider as his federal marshal to keep order, and he made America one nation under Doom. Now, I'm not sure if his version in Rivals is the same, but it seems he might still keep his heroicness compared to his main version, since he was invited to the Hellfire Gala by Emma Frost and did try to stop Ultron. But as Doom himself said, who is Doom 2099? In Marvel, right?
That in exchange for the
internet basically becomes all knowledge for a second, although it like destroys his brain, so Wire's able to save him. After this, Doom takes over a bunch of things, like goes finds different corporations, different countries, we deal with some Wakandans, we deal with Asgardians. Most people don't realize how strong Dr. Doom truly is. Beneath that armored mask lies strength enough to punch through adamantium. Victor Von Doom's custom vibranium adamantium alloy suit augments his power to near colossal levels. One strike from Doom can crack steel and send shockwaves through city blocks, but physical might is only half the equation. Doom's mastery of arcane magic rivals Doctor Strange himself. He's wielded energy blasts that melt reality, summoned demon hordes from other dimensions, and even trapped the Hulk in mystical chains. Most people don't realize how strong Dr. Doom truly is. Beneath that armored mask lies strength enough to punch through adamantium. Victor Von Doom's custom vibranium adamantium alloy suit augments his power to near colossal levels. One strike from Doom can crack steel and send shockwaves through city blocks, but physical might is only half the equation. Doom's mastery of arcane magic rivals Doctor Strange himself. He's wielded energy blasts that melt reality, summoned demon hordes from other dimensions, and even trapped the Hulk in mystical chains he couldn't break. On top of that, Doom's genius-level mind lets him exploit every advantage. He's reverse-engineered alien tech, built Doombots capable of mimicking his abilities, and devised time-travel machines that rewrite history at will. When you combine unbreakable armor, sorcery that bends the cosmos, and a strategic intellect that outsmarts gods, Dr. Doom isn't just. Most people don't realize how strong Dr. Doom truly is. Beneath that armored mask lies strength enough to punch through adamantium. Victor.
Today, the T.B.E, the doctor is in, and we're talking Doom and Pirates Ahoy. On April 10th, 1962, in the original timeline, Marvel Comics released Fantastic Four #5, marking the debut of one of Marvel's most iconic villains, Dr. Doom, or Victor Von Doom to his allies. It's the genius ruler of Latveria. Now, why does Victor Von Doom have such contempt for the Four? Well, you'll never guess who he went to college with. Doom grabs the Fantastic Four and sends them on a time travel mission to steal Blackbeard's treasure chest. And if they do not pull it off in 48 hours, Doom might just make Sue disappear. And we're talking Frank, y'all. Back in the past, they'll have to blend in as pirates, but the band.
I just know I'm 95, more than ever the construction's on. I'm trying to get home to each much I just had to house jump in the shower now. Gonna really do go in it. I'm freaking out if you take some It sounds so good. While I'm deep inside of you, lately I've been feeling for this, been feeling for your moves. Come on, try it all day and night, baby, on top of me. Baby, that's so slow. I'm
Take that back up.
say.
He's bad. What I'm about?
le T.G.E. L'impression qui soigne mon cœur de T.G.E. Couvert d'oseille égaux, je suis sous commande. De la haine en revanche, j'en ai tellement.
Even though he's strong, you don't fuck with somebody, and that's how you know she is.
J'espère que ton nom ne t'a pas lâché. Et il croit savoir pourquoi on m'en je serai pas le premier, je n'ai le dernier. Tu es chef, c'est qui crée pas tard. Tu m'entends sous à ton père Zatar. Tu parles d'un troll, c'est pas un hasard. Je prends mes thunes, j'entre à un casar. J'ai mal à l'une. J'ai mon tête, les anges me parlent, moi j'entends pas. Je suis dans ma rue, je suis baisé, je m'embête. Je comprends pas, pourquoi je comprends pas. Oh, 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 je suis trop vénère. Oh, 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 je dois fermer.
You fuck both of them.
John seemed basically oblivious. Kept playing, reinforcing his teammates there. I thought he never heard it until after this shot. Drains it, points to the heckler, and then starts yelling at him. Watch. He points to the heckler, and then trash talks it. Unbelievable. And then, watch what he does after this play. Drains it for his 23rd point of the half. They call the timeout. And when he goes on the bench, watch what he does next. Points to the same guy and tells him to shut up. He has nothing left to say to him. I couldn't believe this. I had to make sure that was the same guy. Zoom over. And believe it or not, it was the same guy.
Boy, that's no boy.
Сейчас творятся в Мэдисон Сквер Гардене. Вот просто послушайте, как кричат болельщики. Давайте еще раз посмотрим на этот момент. Майкл Джордан не попадает сверху, представьте себе. Но взрыв такого правильного, так сказать, гнева. Так, это Тики Вандервей. Отличная передача для Стики по Сержу Укле.
Just fucking funny, yo. Man, this is funny.
Да уж. Злые события сейчас творятся в Мэдисон Сквер Гардене. Вот просто послушайте, как кричат болельщики. Давайте еще раз посмотрим на этот момент. Майкл Джордан не попадает сверху, представьте себе. Но взрыв такого правильного, так сказать, гнева. Так, это Тики Вандервей. Отличная передача для Стики по Сержу Укле.
jump ball took the place. Michael Jordan was ready to bust out for the timeout went up. It was just a matter of Patrick Ewing tried to cut off the top of the circle. The ball went to Pickens to his right. Jordan was gone.
You gotta be fucking kidding me, yo.